Thank you so much for coming.
Good to be here.
And I recently found out that you actually live here.
I'm a full-time resident in New Orleans.
So we need you to come to not just this music industry forum, but every music industry forum.
Happy to do so, happy to do so. And I've been dragged in here by your amazing new president, President Tetlow, who's a real dear friend. And really the hope, I think, is if I can bring some really interesting people here in like this year in 2019 and hopefully beyond. But what would be great is to get everybody's feedback on what sort of people you like to see here. Are the managers, producers, obviously from all different backgrounds and different music types and styles. So that's something we got to try and figure out. Who do you want to see sit down here and have conversations with Lo or
absolutely
any other members of the faculty?
That'd be great. I have one most important question I have for you. You're married a New Orleanian and you've lived here for how long?
I've only been here 4 years.
Okay.
So
this is probably a no, but have you yet accepted the, and I'm just going to say this is objective reality, not an opinion, that football is a game played with an oblong ball?
Yeah, I mean...
and it has yardage markers on the field and lots of breaks for beer commercials.
I never watched a game of NFL until I moved to New Orleans. Now I'm a season ticket holder. You know, I've only missed one game this season for work. I planned everybody's tours and releases and strategies around the NFL calendar.
Because you can't get away from it, right?
I had to be in London when they played the Rams, so I missed that, unfortunately.
You have no choice in the matter.
But I was up till 2 a.m. watching it on TV, so I didn't miss a game.
I grew up in New York where football was like optional. Then I moved to New Orleans and found it's not optional anymore.
No, it's not.
You don't have a choice. Let's talk about Maverick a little for a second.
Go for it.
So Maverick is this, do you accept that label, mega firm?
Yeah, that was the intention.
And so I heard of Maverick back in the 90s as Madonna's record label. Yeah. Madonna got to the point of mega stardom. She wanted to not only have a record label, but publish books, make movies, and Maverick was her vehicle for that.
It's really common, like a lot of big artists get given imprints. Let's call it an imprint.
Right.
So they might be signed to a major label. In this case, Madonna was signed to Warner Brothers. She was, at the time, their biggest selling artist. And she wanted a label. So she formed Maverick, had some stratospheric success with her first signings. Alanis Morissette, 35 million sales.
Not too bad.
Candlebox, all these big 90s bands, The Prodigy, many, many other bands that were hugely successful. But what tends to happen, and now there's a sort of, shall we say, a template for this, for other artists who get their imprints, they scaled up. They were like what we call a mini major. They had like about 85 staff. Everyone's on big salaries. And the reason that the majors can sustain this is they got tens of thousands of copyrights in their catalogs. So something's always going to sell, and their bottom line business is great. If you're an imprint and you've got 5 artists, 10 artists, you have zero catalog. That's it. Right. So they went from boom to pretty much bust super fast. Imprint was closed down, and label dissolved.
And then, in 2014?
In 2014, I got together with, at that time, 5 other manager colleagues who I'd known for a very long time. And we thought, let's get together, because we're all very like-minded, even though we all manage different genres of artists. And we wanted to see if we could pool our resources and have centralized services. So instead of, if you look at it like 5 companies and everyone's got a digital department, everyone might have a marketing person, everyone might have someone who does branding and sponsorship. If we combine this resource so that we have centralized company, we might be able to have better people, afford better people, and have more resources. That was the intention, and that's what we realized.
Tell us who some of the other managers
and just to finish your question, though, the reason we chose the name Maverick was, like, I had a company that I started, it was called Quest, and at that time, out of all the managers, I was probably the most established, but Maverick felt like a better brand name, and we had the rights to the name, so we took it. Because Guy Sear, who manages Madonna, actually bought the rights to the name. So we used that name as a better brand name.
And you too, right?
Yes, and yes, U2. We didn't have U2 at the time we started Maverick, though.
Right. And so tell us
because we all did the U2
tell us
meeting.
Who a few of the other...
We all did the U2 meeting, and he was the right person to do it, because as soon as you do U2, U2 is one of those artists that if you might think, this is great, I got a meeting with U2, and I'm being considered for the manager. What a lot of people don't realize, as soon as that door closes behind you, and you're the manager of U2, you're working 25 hours a day, 7 days a week. Bono's calling you guaranteed 5 times a day or more. Every single day. It doesn't matter if it's a holiday, if it's Christmas, he's on the phone. It's all about them. And that's one of those life-changing roles if you want to take that on, and not many people want to take that on. The check's great, though.
Yeah. Now, were they managing U2 when they did that? They put their album on everybody's phone when they didn't?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was not you, though.
No, but I was in the meetings. So when people try and do new things, you don't know if they're going to work. You don't know if they're right or wrong. But at that time, it felt like a good thing. No one had ever done it before. You think, hey, wouldn't it be great if everyone woke up and there's a U2 album there?
Seemed like a great idea at the time.
I mean, fast forward to now all the research and data we know, it's like, no, it's a terrible idea. Yeah. But at the time, everyone's like, actually, why didn't I think of that?
Somebody had to do it and figure out that it was going to have repercussions.
But, this is, how do you innovate? How do you move forward? You're going to try a lot of things, and the thing that works will change the game.
Now, I also wanted to ask you, 2014, the year Maverick is founded, also, as we now know, is rock bottom for the record business.
Yeah.
Right? It goes down from 2000 every year to 2014, and its revenues are at an all-time low. So when you guys put together Maverick, was there an idea that, part of what we're doing here is rethinking the music industry, thinking of ways to increase the other revenue streams?
Yeah, very much so. We were all fortunate that everyone that formed Maverick had some pretty heavy hitters as clients. And I'd say we're sort of in the fortunate yet unfortunate position, even still today, where you have a lot of artists who make the majority of their money touring big artists. Pretty much every artist that goes through Smoothie King, or if they're big enough to be playing Superdome, all of their money is coming from touring. Right. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. So records, they want to make records because they're artistic, and that's their creative force and their drive. It's really minor when it comes to their bottom line revenue. So to try and, in management, like I do and all my partners do, you're taking various deals, 10%, 15%. If it's a European style deal, maybe 20% of net rather than gross. So you've got all these different sort of levels of income you're taking from your clients. And you have to prove your worth. You have to give them other opportunities. Some want to do film, TV. Some want to do endorsements or big brand partnerships with sports companies and the likes. So we have to find staff who can try and bring that for us.
And you always manage the full spectrum. You don't delegate their film career to...
No.
Yeah.
We do everything.
And
you bring in agents who help with films, and
sure.
But when they have a creative idea, they call you. They don't call anyone else. And
so it seems like Maverick's mission was also very much tied in with Live Nation's mission, which is your parent company now, correct?
Yeah. Before we formed Maverick, we all had our own individual independent companies.
Right.
Everybody sold half of their company to Live Nation. We centrally
Live
formed
Nation
Maverick.
gets 50%, you kept 50%.
Yeah, yeah.
And Live Nation already had an artist management company, but...
They got an artist management division. It's not really a company.
Okay.
And really, a lot of people see them as a devil. There's this huge company.
The devil, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because they're this huge monolithic company. They got 12,000 employees worldwide.
Yeah.
Huge, huge company. So the only way they can really grow, like all public companies, is to acquire. They got to keep acquiring, show more revenue on the bottom line. And their long-term ambition is that, hey, if I buy into his company, his big artists will tour, hopefully we'll get the tour, then our bottom line in ticketing and everything else looks better. That was their sort of ideal situation. Where the artist benefits, they will actually pay you more. If they own a festival, and most festivals take a cut of the gross on merchandise, say 25%. If your art's on the bill, they might give you 10% back. So the artist had a benefit anytime you would be in a Live Nation venue Live Nation Festival. Anytime you want to muscle one of your major artists onto a festival bill, actually I need to headline that festival on that day. They help you do that. So it's been a massive assistance to us.
Yeah.
I had one artist who had to be paid a certain amount of money, which was $100,000 a night more than the other promoter. They came to the table and they took a hit on every show. So you deliver for your artists, but they back you up. It's been nothing but a positive experience for me.
When I was still touring, I remember that Live Nation was just really starting up, and they were giving us great guarantees. And suddenly our feeling was, they seem kind of corporate, but these are good guarantees.
They're corporate, but say, personally, you know, like I don't know how many people here are from New Orleans or if you're from other cities and you're just coming here to go to school, but you know, having spent a few months here or a couple of years here, I don't know how long everybody's been coming to school, but you know, I'm on one of the great things about New Orleans is the food, which we all agree, you know, and I became friends with some of the chefs here, and one of them roped me into being on the board of one of their foundations. First thing I do to raise money, I call Live Nation. So they provide a check every single year. They don't take credit, they don't get a thanks, they give a check. And all that money goes to sort of inner city youth and after school programs and things. So Live Nation are great. Anytime I ask, they say yes, no question.
I think that, I mean, Live Nation promotes all our ensemble shows. They've given jobs and internships to many of our students, so we're really grateful for our relationship with Live Nation, while at the same time, a little bit of concern about this one company having so much power in the business.
But they have a great CEO, and that's what I think defines any company. Right. You know, he's the only CEO of a major public company. I guarantee if I were to email him now, I'd get a response within 5 minutes. Right? He's got 12,000 employees, and I'm not on his payroll. You know, so
can we bring him to the red chair?
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, he's actually someone else. Now you say that, we should sort of get them involved in the intern program because they have offices and divisions all over the country.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it brings to you as manager to be associated with a group like Maverick rather than your own company? So
well, really, again, one of the concepts when we started, we haven't quite realized it. We think we're going to realize it, hopefully this year, was when you have a bunch of major artists and you get a social media reach of over 1 billion people. When you combine your top artists together, which we have, I think it's like 1.4 billion people is our reach. We thought that's pretty heavy and that's quite a weight. So wind the clock back almost 4.5 years, almost 5 years. And we all thought, wouldn't it be great, can you imagine if the new Twitter started tomorrow, right? Making up a fictitious scenario. And we pulled all of our artists off Twitter and we went on to the new program or this new company, and they gave the artists some equity in that company for moving their platform. The artists benefit, hopefully the company blows up, that equity becomes worth millions and millions of dollars. Artists feel really great about what the management company did for them. That was sort of one small sort of idea. And we think we may realize that this year because we're launching a new company this week actually. It's called Community, community.com. If you go on there, you're not going to see anything. It's just the logo right now. And the concept was, you know, if you're a big artist and you put a message out, hey, here's a link to my new video, and you put it on Facebook, and say this artist has 10 million followers on Facebook, you think, wow, that's a lot of people going to see my video. But really, Facebook shrink down the pipe to about 10%. If you pay them, maybe 20%, pay them a bit more, maybe 30%, and so on and so forth. You put it on Twitter, here's a link to my new video. You might follow 500 people on Twitter, and you didn't check it today, and you missed the link because there's been 1,000 tweets since we posted the link to our new video, and so on. Same thing on Instagram. However you send the message out, not everybody sees it. So we started this new company, Community, and it's kind of soft launching, and the concept was social media by text. So the artist can say, hey, here's my number, text me on this number. You get all the information, everything you need, text me. Everybody's going to text. We got a dashboard. We know where everybody lives, know the state their phone's registered in. We have all this data on the dashboard. And if you get a text from your favorite artist, here's a text from Lil Wayne. If you're into Lil Wayne, you're damn sure going to open that text, right?
I open all my texts from Lil Wayne all the time.
Me too. You know, but when you get, or whatever music or artist you're into, you're going to get the information. Here's a text. Here's a link to my new video. Hey, I'm coming to your city because you just texted everybody in Chicago. I'm playing Monday night, secret show. Everybody's going to open the text. So we beta tested it, 96% open rate to everybody who opens. And we've tested it with a couple of major artists and a bunch of really small developing artists. It's pretty much the same stat.
That really beats the interaction rate of social media and email.
Completely.
Yeah.
It's about being able to get straight to your audience. And this could be anyone here who's in a band or whatever you know, like the announcements as we just came up here, hey, come Monday night or come Saturday afternoon to the Communal Ground, or whatever event's going on. Can you imagine if you just texted everybody?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Is this a proprietary Maverick thing, or is it you going to open it up?
No, it's actually opened up, and the company's already, believe it or not, worth $200 million. Wow. It's not even started. Awesome. Just because of the major investment we got. And we got Salesforce to invest in it.
Okay. So
it's another thing we did as Maverick. We started an investment division for startup companies.
So you're not waking up some mornings thinking, why did I do this Maverick deal? And
no, definitely not. Okay. I do about management, not about Maverick.
Okay. Let's. By the way, just for everybody, you know, I'm going to try to get through my stuff in expeditiously, so y'all have plenty of time to ask Scott questions. So think of some. I want to rewind a little bit and ask you more about you. So in 45 seconds or so, tell us where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you got into the...
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I got from Glasgow in Scotland to New Orleans. You know, pretty much...
Glasgow is where it began.
Glasgow's where I'm from, okay. Yeah. And I'm really old for someone in this room. You know,
You're actually the same age as me.
I
looked
am?
It up. Yeah.
How come you look way better?
I'll accept that because I think you have a lot more money, but okay.
I don't know. But there's a different education system in the UK. Maybe we should do a stand-up thing afterwards, right?
Absolutely.
Different education system in the UK where I grew up. I fast-tracked high school and got my SAT equivalents when I was 15. Went to business school. I think just as I became 16, I started business school. I did 1 year.
I am aware that what they call a public school is a private school.
Yeah, so I went to regular state school. It wasn't fee-paying. I was sort of on the path to be an accountant by the time I was 19 or 20, which sounds pretty depressing, but that was kind of the path. But when I was 12 years old, that was the summer of '77, punk rock hit, changed my life.
Sex Pistols.
Completely. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, you can do anything you want. That was the attitude. You can do anything you want.
And it all went wrong.
That was it. There's no middle school, so you go from primary school education straight to high school. So you're like, I was 11 years old going to high school, and I'm like, what the hell has just happened?
This is a whole room full of people who we've all gone off the wrong path.
You know,
basically.
so for me, my favorite band was The Clash, you know?
The Clash, yeah.
And I'd go see The Clash when I had hair, get mohawks in the dressing room. Clash would let every kid in the dressing room after the show. And, you know, so that was my band, and that's all I want to do is be in music. And I fast-tracked high school, did a year at business school. My dad let me have a gap year before going to do my degree course. I went to London, stayed with a friend, and never went back. I got a job in a photography studio just because I randomly seen an advert for a job in a photography studio and thought, I wonder if I could get that. And back then it was £100 a week, so about $130 a week, which was a lot of money then when albums cost £3, you know, $4. I did that for about 5 or 6 months. My roommates were in a band, an 80s band called the Coulter Twins, which some people may have heard of, but they were this cult band in the 80s, and they were my roommates. And
they were huge, man.
And they were signed to another cult label called 480, which 480 Pixies are probably one of the most well-known bands on 480, and many other great bands. So they said, hey, there's a band on our label. They want a bass player, and I played bass. I auditioned, got in the band. So I'm 17 years old, got a record deal, really sketchy 80s band now, a band called Dead Can Dance, who are still going, surprisingly. And, you know, I'm 17, I'm in a band, I think I've made it. You know, we're in making our first album, so I'm telling my friends who are still at high school, yeah, I'm going on the road and got this great record deal. So I did 2 albums, did a bunch of tours, but very quickly realized we're just not that good.
That is a problem.
Yeah, I know. But at least I was aware by the time I'm like 19, we're not that good. Played with a few other bands.
I still haven't figured that out for myself.
And being in that scene, you know, you're friends with all the other bands. Jesus and Mary Chain were like good friends of mine. They were Scottish. They got this big heavyweight manager, took them on, and they segued me into management with them. And this manager managed a bunch of big 80s bands that are alive, Ultravox, Thin Lizzy, who I think the singer just passed on by then, but they were managing the estate. And so I learned everything I know from this manager, a guy called Chris Morrison, who then went on to manage Blur, Gorillaz, those sort of bands. Amazing, amazing manager.
He was your Yoda.
Yeah, but in the same office was a guy called Simon Fuller. He gave 4 desks to this kid, Simon Fuller. And Simon Fuller is probably the most successful manager of all time. No, Simon Fuller started the whole American Idol, Pop Idol, that whole thing. And he manages the Beckhams now, Spice Girls, Annie Lennox. He just became uber wealthy, Elvis Presley estate and all this sort of thing. So he was in the same building. I worked with Simon for a while, pre-Spice Girls, which was, again, good learning experience. And then I went off to look after this band, the Sugar Cubes, whose singer was Bjork.
Right.
And then sort of almost the rest is history. Because Sugar Cubes split up. I told Bjork I'm getting into management. She went, hey, do you want to manage me? And I went, sure. And it was that casual. And we did a little independent record deal. Again, it was all through friends. It was nothing corporate. And we budgeted for her first album to sell 50,000 copies worldwide. That was the budget. We thought, we do that, we'll break even, maybe just make a little bit of money. First album sold 15 million copies. You know, and I'm in my mid-20s thinking, what the hell just happened? It's kind of out of my league.
That's late 80s? Her debut, was her first?
No, it was actually early 90s. Okay. 93, 4, roughly then. And her first solo show was opening for U2 at Wembley Stadium. And it kind of just fast-tracked from there.
And she's your first management client?
Yeah, she's my first management client.
Yeah. Pretty good one.
I kind of got lucky.
Yeah.
Right?
But you found an artist that was really unique.
No, yeah, because as soon as I said yeah, as soon as I was in the deep end, up to my neck, I'm like, I thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. So I called my mentor, Chris, who's managing Blur, Gorillaz, things like that. And it's like, how do you do a marketing plan? You know, I'm going into this label meetup. What's a marketing plan? You know, and it really was that basic.
Yeah. Wow.
And then it went from, really, the hardest thing to do is when you have one client, is finding the time to do a second. And then finding time to do a third.
Some managers don't do that. I mean, they just stick with the one.
Yeah, exactly. You know, a friend of mine manages Adele. He's got a couple of other smaller clients. He doesn't need anything else.
Right.
You know,
it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
So how long until you decided I can manage someone else besides just Bjork?
I had a couple of smaller acts. Some had minor success. You know, I managed this band who were a complete disaster called Alabama 3. In America, they had to change the name to A3. And I just always loved one song that this band had done. And I think they're still going. I don't manage them anymore. And we had just one of those strokes of luck where there was this new TV show being developed. This is sort of mid-late 90s. Someone said there's a HBO mafia drama. They need a song. I said, I got the song. And it was The Sopranos. So this band did this theme tune to Sopranos, and we got the option just for a pilot. They went, yeah, they're going to do one series. We licensed for the series. Then it's like, hey, we're doing home video, pre-DVD, license the song for home video. They're going to do a second season, and so on and so forth. This was the days when TV companies didn't have their act together.
And they didn't have the license that just covers everything.
Nowadays, you got a song, we're signing you for everything in the moon and the world and everything that hasn't been invented and may never be invented, but we own it. for 20 grand.
I remember when Netflix started streaming movies, the whole question of whether Netflix had it was, did they license the songs, or were they able to do that?
And this thing went on for every seasons, I think 8 seasons of The Sopranos. We had to license, and the license fee went up and up. Band got dropped, band got re-signed, band got dropped, band got re-signed. They had 3 record deals, major deals, off the back of one song.
You could not have had The Sopranos without that song.
No, but what, and the cherry on the cake, which is probably one of my most proudest moments, is, and they were getting by this point about 300 grand a series, which sounds like a lot, but by the time the label gets a piece and publishers get the piece, you know, it whittled down, and the band's account was healthy, and they would see some of that. By the time we got to the final season, there was this giant spread of Sopranos, final season, Annie Leibovitz spread on Vanity Fair cover, and like 20-page feature with David Chase, the creator, saying how they thought the series had made them close to $1 billion. It was like huge for TV at that point. It was really the beginning of superstars in TV. So we all got together with the label and thought, well, what if we just say no, they're not getting the song for the final season? And we did. And they came in and said, no, you're not having it. They were, we got to have it. And we just said, nope, not having it. And we ended up getting the band.
Cruel.
I think we got them $1.8 million for the track for the final season. One song, you know. But that's never going to happen again. And of course, that goes into the label account, that goes into the publishing account, but it means the band's recouped. They're fully recouped, and they're going to get paid out on that.
They still get some money every time.
The band is still going, and they're still living off the same money.
That's great.
Yeah. You know, I bumped into Glastonbury a few years ago, and it's like, still playing. But, you know, that was one of the lucky experiences, kind of lucky and unlucky. There were a bunch of drug addicts. They were a nightmare, really funny guys, but had no career, really passionate about what they do. And they this one song that is brilliant. You put on that song, you know Sopranos immediately.
Yeah. When did you start with Arcade Fire?
Arcade Fire was 2000, I think it was as soon as their album Funeral came out, just in the US and Canada, September 2004. And everyone was aware of the band that summer of 2004, because that was really the beginning of blogging culture. You know, pre-blogging. Oh, right. So people would go to concert and then they would just write on some blog. It was really pre-social media. Yeah. It was early social media. Hey, I just seen this band. They're really cool. And people would take other people's reviews or, you know, word of mouth on and say, oh, yeah, sure, I'll check them out. And it was this whole online world was just burgeoning, and they were they really benefited from that.
And the bloggers loved them.
But they didn't want to have a manager. It was sort of one of those things where I hit them up straight away, and they were like, no, we're cool. We're doing it ourselves. Okay, cool.
Were they managing themselves before you? Or did they have 100%. A different manager?
They had a lawyer. They had an accountant. That was it.
And they had a record deal?
Yeah, just in the U.S. with Merge.
Okay.
Really terrible record deal. The worst record deal anyone's ever signed. And then by the time it got to 3 months after the album came out, hadn't been released anywhere else in the world, I got a call saying, okay, the band's doing a bunch of meetings with everybody. Do you want to do a meeting? I went, yeah. And I think I met them in London. Yeah, I met them in London. I was the last meeting. And it was sort of their first London show, and there was 400 people there in a sweaty club. And it was everybody's hanging around trying to get time with the band because they were sort of blowing up. And they went, can you come to Paris tomorrow? Because we haven't really got time to meet. And I went, sure. So I went to Paris the next day. I'm in Paris, and they're like, same thing, it's kind of blowing up. All right, can you come on the bus with us tonight to go to Amsterdam? I went, sure. You know, so I end up going to Amsterdam. We talked the whole night, watched the show in Amsterdam, and went the next night, overnight on the bus again to Berlin, talk all night. And I've been in the same clothes for about 3 days, you know, just thought I'd be going somewhere in and out. And by the time I left Berlin, you know, I was managing the band.
So you
and redid all the record deals, set up the record for release every other country in the world because it hadn't come out yet.
Did you have a feeling right away of, you know, this is it, this is my next big artist?
Yeah, immediately. You know, everybody, and not only me, there's this incredible photographer and film director, Anton Corbijn. That's, if you don't know him, you should look him up, Anton Corbijn. He does all Depeche Mode graphics and artwork. He does a bunch of U2's photos. I mean, from the early 80s on, he was always my favorite photographer as a kid, doing Joy Division photos and things like this. And I bumped into Anton at their London show, and he just goes, I've never seen anything like this. You know, everyone you've seen, they knew that there was something special about this band. But what was different about them was their business model. Everyone else that I was working with, you'd sign a record deal, independent or major. You know, it was standard royalties or a profit share deal. It was all very traditional. What set them apart was they had no publishing deal. They owned all their own rights because they paid to record the record themselves. First album cost them $8,000 to make. They had a friend at the studio.
Of their own money.
Of their own money. They all worked in coffee shops, and from playing shows, they'd fund it. Right. And they went into a friend's studio overnight. They do some at home. You know, their friend, I own the artwork. It's in my house here. Cause
they're not from here. They did relocate here?
Yeah, Wynn and Regine live here. They live here full time.
But are they from Montreal?
Regine's from Montreal. Wynn's originally was born in California, grew up in Texas, went to school in New England. So he's American, she's Canadian.
Gotcha.
But they live here. So their business model was different because all of a sudden you got this really hot commodity and a band who didn't do a worldwide deal. So we did multiple, I think we had about 8 record deals in place for that first album and for the second. It got really complicated trying to manage it all.
And international
But we did it all, you know, and I sort of had to staff up to service them because of the nature of the business model. They made way more money for selling smaller amounts of records than most other bands because they were getting probably the equivalent of 5 times per unit what most other bands got. So when the first album sold 1.6, 1.7 million worldwide maybe, you know, they made like $10 million off that. And this is a band who were living in apartments that cost $400 a month and stuff. They were super low rent.
It's amazing what you can do if the record label's not taking 85%.
Correct. You know, and they've leveraged that. But since, if you fast forward, I started working with them about a year or so ago. The last album didn't reach their ambitions. Not my fault. I didn't write the music. And we're all still friends, you know, but they felt, okay, it's just time. We need a fresh approach. How are we going to take this forward? But it's a band, I'd licensed their catalog, and it's a small catalog. It's only 5 albums. Done the publishing 3 times. Done their catalog deal 3 times. And the last time we moved it, you know, they got, you know, an 8-figure check for moving their entire catalog to Columbia Records. And so they've managed to get paid on the same records 3 times. And I've never been able to do that with anyone in such a short space of time. It's really, really innovative, creative way, and they own all of their own masters. Everything's just under license. They own their own publishing. It's under short-term license.
I guess I want you to talk a little bit about not only the money part, but what...
But also, this is not genre-specific. This is purely deal-specific. And this deal could be for a hip-hop band, a country band, pop band. Doesn't matter. It's all deal-specific.
Right.
Which everyone should know, regardless of if you've ever heard of Arcade Fire or not. It doesn't matter.
I feel like it, beyond the money and how much they made and how much of their stuff they owned, it also must have meant a great deal to you to be involved with their career and Bjork's career.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
for me, that was my schooling. I just came up in a more punk alternative rock background. Right. And how I ended up managing Shania Twain and Andrea Bocelli, I've got no idea. But
we'll get to them in a minute.
But the other thing about Arcade Fire was like they were such a dominant force in live music, so we were able to build this huge live career, not just in the U.S. or Canada, but worldwide. You know, like we could sell 100,000 tickets in London, you know, for a little alternative rock band. That was crazy.
Do you feel, are you more personally connected when you're with the artist on their upward trajectory rather than if you...
Well, this is where things slightly change for me personally. At this point, say just as we formed Maverick, my head office for me personally was London. I had office in New York and LA as well, staff there. But we had in London, about 45 staff. We had about 40 artists that we worked with. Most of them were developing. You know, and this is only not a long time ago, this is 4 or 5 years ago, where you could always justify, if everybody believed in an artist that you took on for management, you could always make it work. You could make the math work. You could pay staff to work on that artist, You know, you'd help develop them. And obviously not every artist, after one campaign, you know if they're really great and they're going to get on to their second or their third and so on and grow. And some may just, it didn't happen, label drops them, they split up, whatever happened.
Right.
But it was up to about then, we were always in the developing business.
Right.
Then we started to lose so much money. We were losing so much money that really only our top 4 or 5 artists were paying for the entire company.
Right.
And the developing world, because this is when the bottom fell out of music. You know, streaming hadn't kicked in. People were not buying.
Right.
And there wasn't enough money going back in. Labels stopped giving people big advances. So you couldn't live off the advances for publishing or for recording. And it was hard. We had to do a massive cull in our roster. We cut it right down to about 8 or 9 artists.
This is pre-Maverick still you're talking about?
This is sort of just about as Maverick's coming together. It's actually the first thing Guy Sear, my partner, said. He said, you get too many artists, they're not all going to succeed. You got to let it go.
Right.
And he was right, 100% right.
And it really did become harder to break new artists in those
really,
years.
really hard.
Yeah. Is it easier now in the last 4 years with things have gone?
I mean, we got a couple of developing artists. We got this one really great young artist, Charlotte Lawrence, who's just about to sign her first record deal. You know, and we put out a few tracks. She was getting 20, 30 million streams on songs that we put out with no label. So that's a sort of interesting model. She's toured. It's all been self-funded. But it's hard to break new artists. I mean, let's face it, the most popular music is traditional pop, hip-hop, and rap. That's the dominant force in music right now.
Sure.
If you're outside of those genres, I'd say it's almost impossible unless you've got some great songs.
Well, let's talk about an artist who was pretty well established when you started, Sir Paul.
Yeah.
How long have you been working with him?
This is my 13th year with Paul.
13th year?
Yeah.
So,
and I put out over 50 separate releases with him in 13 years.
I don't know how you can work with Paul McCartney. I don't even know that. Can you talk with Paul McCartney? I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, I get some amazing texts here. You know, little thumbs up and cowboy emojis and stuff. Yeah, you know,
he uses emojis in his texts
every time.
Which ones does he like to use the most?
A little cowboy and a big thumbs up. You know,
I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
he has a career that has spanned more than 50 years for a reason. Didn't get there by accident.
Right.
And this is what sets him apart from the rest of the pack. Now, he obviously started up in the band called the Beatles.
I have heard of them, yes.
But I don't know if anyone's read Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers. There's a book by the
book.
Yeah. So there's this book, and you can take what you want from the book. You know, some things I really think, yeah, this could be true. Other things I sort of, I'm not sure about that, you know, but it's an interesting book nonetheless. And one of the things in this book is he uses as one of his stats and facts is that the Beatles, when they were really young, before they were famous, they went to Hamburg in Germany. Right. And they were there for about 10 months, give or take. And they played in this nightclub for 8 hours a day.
Yeah, at least to 12.
Yeah, they'd probably be, it was like almost like 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. or something like that. Yeah. They would play 8 hours a night, every night, 6 days a week. 8 hours, 6 days a week. Right. So at that point, you're learning every new song, every cover version, every blues track, every soul track, every R&B track. They learned everything. Yeah. And when you're playing that much, regardless of the genre, you're going to be pretty good at the end of it. Right? It's just practice after practice. And Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000-hour rule. He says you do anything for 10,000 hours, you'll be an expert. And there's some truth in that. Yeah. But when you're physically playing, if you're a pianist or a musician, if you're just playing and playing and playing that much, you're going to be pretty good. So by the time they went back to Liverpool, they were playing in tiny little clubs. They're fourth band on the bill. They're nothing special. No one knows them. Every other band were probably rehearsing for a couple of hours on a Tuesday night or an hour on a Sunday afternoon. And these guys had been drilled for 48 to 50 hours a week playing nonstop. So by the time they went on the bill, they just blew everybody away, day one.
Yeah.
And you couldn't compete. To a point where they said they had to start writing their own songs because you got 5 bands on a bill, and most of them are playing similar songs because the songs at the moment, they're all cover bands. And that's how they really started on their own. So they had a head start because of Hamburg.
I think that is a great way that Malcolm Gladwell does that story in that book.
Yeah,
and
I know.
Another amazing thing is that not only did they turn into that band, that great good time party rock and roll band in Hamburg, but then in the recording studio, once they got signed under George Martin, they left all that behind and turned into something completely different, reinvented themselves again, and they could have easily gone on to a good career being the first band.
Sure. But they were so driven, especially for writing, because they became good at writing.
And it feels like they were very motivated to be kind of in touch with all the changes that were going on.
But they were great players as well.
Right.
There's the thing, you got to remember their first 3-4 albums, everything is put down completely live.
So how hands-on on business is Paul?
He's massively. I mean, really sort of, when Paul first called me about 13 years ago, I thought I was the shit. I thought I knew everything, right? I thought I'm the guy, I'm managing the coolest acts in the world, Bjork and Arcade Fire. I'm like, I'm good, It's like, I'm in Paul McCartney calls, I'm like, I'll do the meet.
So he called you up?
Yeah, he cold called me. He didn't meet anyone else. He didn't audition me.
You had no idea that was coming?
No. Didn't get a heads up. It was sort of one of those things, the phone rings, and it's a private number, and it goes, hi, is that Scott? And yeah, this is Paul McCartney. I stood up, and I'm like, I'm in my office on my own. I'm sort of like, what do I stand up for? There's no one here.
So he just researched you? He knew about your work?
I found out he got my number from his daughter, Stella, who then got it from a magazine editor who's a mutual friend of mine and Stella's. She called this mutual friend of ours, a magazine editor, said, I got to get someone in music to work with my dad. And he's going, I don't know anyone. I don't run a fashion magazine. And he's the only guy I know through Bjork. And she's like, give me his number. And that's how random it was. So that didn't it wasn't a lawyer, it wasn't researched, it was super random. It's always a case of who you know.
And you weren't campaigning for it, or I have to manage Paul McCartney.
I went and met Paul, and Paul just said, yeah, you're your manager. I don't really like managers, and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, me neither. But, and he said, let's give it a couple of months and see what happens. And I thought I was on my game and I thought I knew everything, but then he would catch you out. A few months in, he always had a habit of calling you when you least expected it. Most people will sort of be reasonably respectful and call you between 8 and 8 sort of thing, unless there's something going on or there's a tour, then it's different. But he would sort of call you at like that 9, 10 p.m. on a Friday night. Just when you're like in a restaurant or you go in a bar, or you're just tired and you're home. It's like he'd call you, hey, what's going on? What's happening with and he'd go straight in. Yeah. With this thing, you remember we spoke about that Monday? What's happened? And you got an answer? And I'm like, you don't have your notes. I don't have my notepad. And I'm like, let me see. Let me try and get my notes. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. Remember you said you'd call me back about this. You haven't called me back. What's happening? And I'm like, very quickly, I'm like, okay, he's just bobbing my head underwater. It's just like, But then when I learned the drill, I'd make some notes. So if he called me, I'd just have a little card. Yep, this is happening, this is going on. You said you'd call me back on this. You haven't called me back. And I started throwing it. It's like all of a sudden we're playing tennis. I'm like, boom, who could ace the most? Until like I'd start calling him at random times because he always said, call me anytime, not a day.
Turnabout is fair play.
9 a.m. Saturday morning. Hey, how's it going? Yeah. And he was always cool. He would always take a call. And then at that point when you kind of know the game, you become better at it. All of a sudden, I'm like, I'm going back to school. He's making me better at my job. And all of a sudden, my job with my other clients became better. And it's like, I'm like, whoa, you feel drilled. It's like going to the mental gym.
Did he tell you, certain things that he was looking for that he wasn't getting with his previous management?
Yes, he said he got bored really quickly. Didn't want to get bored. So I made sure he never got bored. I also researched he hadn't won a Grammy in 20 years since I took him on. And I think we won 13 or 14 Grammys in that time, which is great.
So that was important.
Yeah.
That was an important thing.
Things like artists like this, they never look in the rearview mirror. They never want to look back. They always want to look forward. So all he's thinking about is what's next, what's next, what's next, what can I do? Come up with a Beatles reissue. He's like, okay. I know it has to be done, but it doesn't excite him. So then I started looking at his solo catalog, and I'm like, well, why aren't we doing more with it? It's kind of a bit of a mess. And I told him I want to do a catalog campaign, just pick out all the key releases, records that I like Band on the Run from '73, which is just amazing album.
Yes,
and he just let me go ahead. And as soon as we did it and we won a Grammy, he's like, all right, do campaign. And we're now on our 13th release, and just on the catalog campaign, we won about 5 Grammys. But then at the Grammys about 3 years ago, I think we won 6. He didn't win all 6 because it was best packaging and best surround mix, but it was all his projects. And at that point, I'm like, I don't know if we'll ever get a better night than this. You've won 6 Grammys and every conceivable different. He didn't win for his 4 or 5 seconds. If he'd won that, it would have been in everything. Best rock, best rap, whatever, hip hop.
Right.
But it's been great to sort of be able to contribute to that kind of career and then deliver him his first ever career solo #1, debut #1. He'd had #1s, but never debuted, just back in September.
For album or single?
Album.
For album.
Yeah. Which was probably the happiest I've ever seen him.
So what motivates Paul? I mean, it can't be money, right? He's the world's wealthiest musician, is what I've heard.
Yeah. He's a worker. He's sort of got this old school British working class mentality that he goes to work on a Monday, he finishes work on a Friday, takes the weekends off, unless he's touring. And he will go in the studio every single day. Every single day he goes in the studio. He'll work on something. He'll work on a score or a soundtrack or new songs every single day. He's in a place he can go to the studio, he goes.
Another thing I remember from the Beatles recordings book, that there was that book published that gave the logs of all the Abbey Road sessions. Yeah. And the night they wrapped the final mix on the last mix of Sgt. Pepper, the next day they came in and started on like Baby, You're a Rich Man or something. But just the next day, it's just they were hungry to do more.
But what's fascinating about Paul, just even as a musician, was when the Beatles got their first real money, I think like quite early on, they had early success. So they all bought houses. Paul bought a house that was very modest, not that modest, but pretty modest compared to what he could have bought. 5 minutes walk from Abbey Road Studios. George Harrison bought a castle. John Lennon bought a white mansion where he filmed Imagine.
Yeah.
Ringo bought whatever he bought, but they bought all these sort of yeah, exactly. So all these guys kind of like they were like, hey, we made it. So Paul was the first one in and the last one to leave the studio.
And he didn't want to play anything but that old Hofner bass for a long time, too,
yeah,
right?
I know. But he actually ended up playing guitar on a lot of the Beatles things and drums and a lot.
Right.
Because what Paul, and I've seen him do this on his last album. He brought in a bunch of great musicians, some of his touring bands, some other musicians. They'd lay down the tracks and he'd be okay. He's working on the song. He's super fast at working. Fastest I've ever seen at laying down tracks. Everybody goes home. He goes, all right, let's give it some feel now. He'll go back and he'll redo the drums. And we're working with Abe Laborio Jr., who is by far the best drummer alive today. And Paul goes in and plays it better. He just plays it with feel. It's different. Mm. And he's got amazing technical guitars. He'll just go in and he'll lay the tracks down again. He did the same in the Beatles.
77?
76. 77 in June.
Okay.
He doesn't act like it. He's like the last one to go to bed. He goes to the gym every day. He horse rides. He's eats well. He's 32-inch waist. He still wears the same clothes he could wear when he was in the Beatles. It's like,
Well, let's hope
but it's inspiring as an artist, just as someone who's prolific, productive. He's working on a Broadway musical right now. He doesn't stop.
I want to let these guys ask you some questions,
sure.
But just let's do one more. We talk a lot about all the industry stuff in the program and entrepreneurship, but we also talk about values and working with artists and positive relations between the artistic and creative side of the music world and the business side. And I want to ask you, what are the things you've done as manager that you're most proud of? And what are the things you've learned about working with artists? Not necessarily just on making them more money, but even beyond that.
I think artists, first and foremost, people are artists for a reason. They're different from all of us. I'm not an artist. I thought I could have been when I was 12, 13, 14 years old.
Right.
But then when you meet real artists, you realize I'm not one of them. And it's hard to put into words, but if you're in a restaurant or a bar or a room like this, trust me, if David Bowie walked through the door right now, I guarantee without him announcing he was here, and if we didn't know he was coming, everyone would just turn around because you knew he was there. We'd stop talking.
Didn't actually happen, did it?
Yeah, but it's stuff like that.
Yeah.
You just know when you're in the presence of these people. It's crazy. And even younger artists who aren't as established as a David Bowie sort of character, you know, you just feel the presence. You're like, there's something special about this person. You can't put it into words. And, you know, even when I was working with Björk, she was kind of famous to a point, but not that famous until she wore her swan dress on the Oscars red carpet. But even before then, it was just her sense of style. You know, she thought she was sort of, you know, just a regular person. And she'd walk into some supermarket with some couture dress, and everyone would just drop the baskets and look at her and say, why is everybody looking at me? And it's like, well, why don't you just wear sweats and a baseball cap and some sunglasses and no one will look at you? And she couldn't get that, you know. And so that's the thing that defines the artist from everybody else. You know when you're in the presence of someone who has some greatness, something unique that you don't have, but you recognize it. So that's the first thing about artists. I've gone off on a tangent and forgot the rest of the question.
Well, I found a quote, and you know, one never knows how accurate these quotes are, but you once said something approximating, sometimes artist makes mistakes and you just say, I told you so, and work through it. So how do you know when to say, no, don't do that, and when to say, I know they're making a mistake, but they have to.
They sort of know. Obviously, it's got to be a good example in the Last Arcade Fire campaign. You know, they, you know, had this super grand ambition for this record, and they thought it would be really great if they focused all their resources in setting up a fake Twitter account, right? You know, they thought, okay, we got a concept. Let's pretend we've signed to this fake big corporation, and they bought all our rights, and let's start the Twitter, and we'll get the guys who run The Onion and some other comedians that we know just to post these tweets. Super funny. It was really great. But that's the sort of thing you can do for a minute, right? And everyone has a laugh, then you kind of go back to business.
They took it too far.
Yeah, because that was all the focus. They only got up to 10,000 people following in this. And it's like, well, there's millions on the other one you're ignoring. Why do you come on? And they couldn't see it. And I said, this isn't working. It's not connecting. You just haven't got, you know. And they thought it was really funny in such a small boutique way, which I sort of get, but it just became the sole focus.
So did that put you in the uncomfortable position of having to say, look, guys, I know you love this, but...
I told them, but I'm like, you got to let people do, if that's what they want to do, let them do it. Yeah. You know, and I'll focus on the bricks and mortar, try and prop up the campaign without it. But there's always a time you can't insult artists as well. You got to be really careful. You can't just say, "Well, I told you so." Now you look stupid. You know, you just can't do that. You know, you've always got to be polite about it, respectful about it, and still sort of say, "I told you so." I told you not to do that, but hey, you wanted to. You insisted.
What qualities of yours do you think you have enabled you to be successful at this? Because I think you're pretty successful at this.
You do have to have a work ethic,
right,
which I think I got from my dad. He forced me to go to work with him, and it was miserable.
Doing what now?
He made barrels for whiskey.
Barrels for whiskey?
Wood barrels, yeah, wood and oak barrels.
No whiskey, actually, in them?
Empty ones. Didn't even get the benefit of that. So,
a cooper?
Yeah, he's a cooper. He made me go to actually have to paint barrels, and it's like, Jesus, painting barrels. But he forced me to work really hard for a long time. Like every school vacation, he had to work. And when you're doing this job, especially if you don't have the good fortune to go and work for a big company, so it's like, hey, I got a paycheck and I'm learning on the job. If you actually find your artist that you want to collaborate with and work, and you can't afford an assistant and can't afford an office, so you're working out your bedroom or something, or your kitchen, and you got your cell phone, your laptop, and your email, and you're hustling. You got to work night and day. And then you're like, okay, I've been buying all these plane tickets to get everywhere. How am I going to get my money back? So you got to have a sort of little bit of business acumen to try and make it all make sense if you choose to go out the wholly independent route. But you got to be reasonably savvy and reasonably smart. And don't ever let it get to your head, because the worst thing you can do is yo, we got like 20 million streams and we're getting a check for a few grand at the end of the month. Let's go and blow it and buy like, you know, a 20-year-old Bentley because it looks cool. You know,
20 million streams is kind of like selling 10,000 records used to be, right?
Yeah. But it's like you make money, first money you make, hire someone. Right? Make a bit more money, okay. Keep it for a rainy day because you're going to go through a dry period. And the thing about management is it's cyclical. You know, last year I probably had my most commercially successful year I've ever had. Yeah, this year I got no major albums. We have album releases, but other than I'm working on a Madonna record, but I'm not managing Madonna. I'm part of a team. So
there's a collective team, and you've got the record. That's your...
Yeah. You know, and it is tricky because there's expectations, which is another thing. How do you manage the expectations of the biggest artists in the world who were once so big, you couldn't really... They were almost untouchable. Yeah, again, we're in a different world where if Kendrick Lamar dropped a new track tomorrow, it would be the biggest thing in the world. Madonna drops a new track tomorrow, it's really not. So how do you manage that success and set it up for success? You know, that's a challenge with those really big artists.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of those charts showing that the numbers for the recording industry have come back.
Yeah, yeah.
But I feel like it's gone disproportionately to the top artists, not evenly across the board.
Completely. It's exactly that.
Right.
I think it's going to take another 3 to 5 years before things really level up. You know, there has to be this massive wave of everybody's parents, everybody's uncles and aunts, and moving on to a streaming service so that more money can go in. People who have different musical tastes. It doesn't matter what you're into. It's like as long as people consume music, it's good for business.
Right. Well, let's bring
sure.
in some of the students. And can we raise the house lights just a little bit so Scott can see who's asking questions?
Yeah, thanks.
And any students or faculty. Audrey.
How do you find it different, like managing a smaller, like pop artist like Marina and the Diamonds, rather than like giving attention to you would Paul McCartney?
I'm lucky I've got a team of people. You know, I got some brilliant female managers who work with me, and the best manager I have actually does Marina, and she also did Shania Twain for me as well. So we work as teams. You know, you can't just do it solo on your own. There's always 3 or 4 people who work a project in my office, just in case anything goes wrong. And plus, you're trying to cover the world. So we have people in London who are covering like that part of the world. You're working in different time zones just because when there's a global campaign, you can't just be living in LA because the rest of the world's gone home by the time you get out of bed, sort of thing. So, but the actual amount of work that goes into an artist like a Marina and the Diamonds versus the amount of work that goes into Paul McCartney, it's actually pretty similar. The man hours, the thought process, the number of meetings you have to take, the jobs and the job list you have to check the box for putting out an album, it's pretty similar. It's incredibly difficult. I actually don't think for a major release, anyone can do all the work and achieve all the work you need to do by the time you get to street date these days. Because the world we live in is so fragmented. You know, it's not just a case of, okay, we've made a bunch of CDs and we've made some vinyl, let's just push it out there and it's on iTunes. Easy. You know, and you do like a few TV shows and you do a few interviews and that's your campaign. Now we're just in such a fragmented world. You got to speak with everyone. Artists has to give time to everybody. They have to do a lot of things they're not always super comfortable with as well. But the time that goes into this it's huge. It's you know, and someone like Marina, we're also in this really weird time where he is an artist who has a massive social media following, huge social media following, and she may have hit the glass ceiling career-wise. She might not get any bigger. She might not get to arena level. Maybe she'll be in the 2,000 to 5,000 clubs and theaters around the world. That's a really good success.
It's a great level to be, and she's a great artist.
Great level to be at, but from an artist's point of view, is that artist going to be successful or satisfied with that success rate? And that's, I can't answer that question because some artists feel that they failed because, oh, I haven't got any further than what I got. I didn't make a step forward this time. And we've had this conversation about Marina. I haven't had it with her. But it's really a question. It's like she isn't going to get to Madison Square Garden this time, no matter how great the music is, how great the concept is, how rabid her fan base are. And they're amazing, and she's great with her fan base. But it's like her, another artist that I used to manage, Licky Lee, same thing. She was on this level where she can play Radio City Music Hall, and that's 6,500 seats. That's as big as she'll ever be. And she went backwards on this campaign when we stopped managing her because she thought she failed on the last one. She's like, you didn't deliver. And it's like, well, you didn't on the music. You had all these commercial songs with Greg Kurstin that you thought were too commercial and you wanted to go darker. You didn't get any radio play because you had no songs to get played on the radio. So artists, you've always support the artist in the direction they want to go. But yeah, time-wise, energy-wise, it's exactly the same. So I guess for you, if you want to be a manager, if you had some big artist come along, oh, I'll get really well paid on this, or to work this thing that I really love, that's where you have to sort of make the decisions.
Right. DJ?
I just want to say thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you.
It means a lot. So one thing that I'm starting to learn as like just entering this industry is that success is great, but for myself and my team, one of the things that we've learned the most from is failures. So the question I'd like to ask you is, what is your greatest failure and what have you learned from it?
Ooh. Great question. Really great question. I think sort of early on, we made a lot of financial mistakes, which was sort of, at the time, felt as though they were maybe easily absorbed by the projects we were working, because the projects were quite successful. But we just burned through so much money making really bad mistakes in planning, bad mistakes in the simple things, travel and all the logistics. And you've always got to be careful when you hire staff as well. If you get to that point where you can really pay for a great team, these days people want to be paid a lot of money if they're really skillful. And you might make the wrong decisions. So how do you make the right decisions when you hire people? I've made some financial mistakes hiring the wrong people because you find out well into project that was the wrong person. You can't just fire people because of people's contracts these days. You got to be, it's always a negotiation. So, and again, when money is limited, you got to be super careful, especially when it's yours. Thanks.
Anthony?
Hi, I just want to thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
I apologize, I wrote my answer down.
Go for it.
Well, with the surge of the social networks over the last decade, I find that we try to do a lot of different things to market the artistic enterprise. And especially in an industry where our values are aligned on the foundations of passion and innovation, there are many directions we can take with it. So, and you kind of hinted this throughout your interview, but how much preliminary research would you recommend doing before you start a new endeavor?
When you say start a new endeavor,
such as like trying a new social media marketing technique or trying to minimize costs for a new...
I think right now the existing social media networks are pretty tried and tested, and you know what you're going to achieve unless one of the existing social networks starts a new program. Hey, we got this thing happening for video, or this thing happened. Unless they're going to start something that they're really going to heavily emphasize and you just happen to have the right timing to be attached to that, I think you've always got to try and innovate and try new things. They might not always work, but when you succeed, it pays back tenfold. But at the same time, you're trying to cater for me working with artists. And yet I'm a consumer as well. I love music still with a passion. I'm lucky I play music all day, every day, all kinds of music. I like everything. So how do you reach the consumer in a way that they don't feel you're over-pushing, overselling? And that's, how do you sell to your consumer the way you'd want to be sold to? How would you want to be spoken to through various social media networks the way you would want to be spoken to and not feel as though I'm shoving this hard sell? I'm a big artist and I'm pushing this at you, because at that point you're just put off. I don't even care how good the music is. I'm done with this. I'm getting, everywhere I go, it's just being oversold. So I think it's almost like, how do we pull back, be more subtle, be more tasteful, more appealing to people? I'd love to find out new ways to do this, because one of the exciting things about this industry is in the past 18 months, I put out 4 global album releases, deliver them all at #1 worldwide for those artists, 4 different genres. Yet for the first time in my whole career, it wasn't actually that satisfying. So I'm like, hang on, this is like the most success I've ever had, with major artists. They're all happy, yet something felt a little bit hollow about it. And a couple of things were the way we had to sell the records wasn't satisfying, because we're in this world now where there's, I don't know how much you get into the detail of how albums are sold, but we're in the world of album ticket bundles right now, just in the US, not anywhere else in the world, where, you know, again, if you're, I'm going to use these examples, if you're Kendrick Lamar, or you're Kanye West, or you're Ed Sheeran, or you're Ariana Grande, or whatever, you know, streaming is just going to do the work. You know, you put an album out, boom, it's just going to be up there, and it's going to hover in the top 10 for however long, you know, 6 months, 8 months, or whatever. Any other artist, you'll see, oh, Luke Bryan's album's gone in, done 250,000 copies first week on Billboard. And then boom, it's gone to number 48, week 2. You know, boom, they're in at number 1, whoever, big rock band. Boom, they're gone again. Oh, Pink, she's gone in at number 1, she disappears. Oh, 6 months later, she's back at number 1 again because she added another 40 dates on her tour. And how this mechanism works is, and tell me if I'm getting boring, but it's actually kind of, it is going to change because it's, again, we've fallen into the system and it's just not satisfying. Chart rules have to change. The charts themselves have to change because they're not actually that relevant. But you buy a ticket for a concert, and with that ticket for the concert is maybe inbuilt, maybe $6 is baked into your ticket. That's technically the record company's money. And so you sell 10,000 tickets, $6 a ticket, that's $60,000 gone into the pot. The record company needs at least 70% of these people to redeem the offer, and they have to, they'll get an email, hey, with your ticket, you got your free album for Pink or whoever it is. You got an email, yeah, I'll have my album. As soon as you redeem, they will mail you that album for free. You bought 4 tickets, you're going to get 4 CDs. 4 CDs in the mail. Not digital albums, but 4 CDs. But only about 70%, and it's almost a science now, 70% of people will redeem. I got up to 80% on one project last year. But that was all in the email messaging just because I refined it right down so I know how to do it. So your week 1 sales are inflated. If you've got 50 dates, and you're going to play to potentially 500,000 people, and you get 70% of people to redeem that, that's 350,000 CDs you could potentially sell week 1. Week 2, you vanish, you're gone. You know, so it's not super satisfying, but it's almost like what the big artists have to do to prop up their week 1 or maybe week 2 sales if they stagger their releases. So how do we do it better? How do we get people to consume music outside of the hip-hop and pop genres? And that's classical, it's country, that's rock, it's alternative, it's, you know, whatever genre, bluegrass. You know, how do we get people to consume more music in all the other genres, yet still feel as though we got a reasonably healthy, competitive, you know, platform for everybody to be on? Because it used to be exciting. Oh, you know, we're gonna, you know, and I've been in those chart battles, unfortunately 2 or 3 times with Eminem. I always come up against Eminem, and it's like, man, and I beat him every time, which is great, you know, but just by like 1,000 units, 3,000 units, and you're like, oh man. You know, but I did it with Paul and Eminem in September. It's like, I can't believe I got Eminem again, you know. And he tried every trick in the book. He actually sold music on, which I didn't even know existed, but I do know now. The prison service in the U.S. has a it's not. I think you got to pay. It's not a subscription. But he actually did 4,000 units the same week that we came out to the prison service. They tried every trick in the book. I kept some of our bundle reporting back, so they thought we'd sold less, so they took the foot off the gas. You know, it was almost like you get to the final minutes of the 4th quarter, boom, you know, they couldn't catch. You know, and so there's all these strategies, and that's sort of where the sport is still fun, but the way we have to sell music, it's not that fun. But we do need more ways to do it, and that's really, we get these ideas from you guys, you know, how can we do better?
Scott,
Thanks.
Believe it or not, we're actually 2 minutes over time.
Oh, sorry.
This has gone by so fast.
Thanks, everyone.